And I said, I can't do this. I said, this is hard. This area is, it's driving me nuts. And she said, well, didn't they tell you? I said, tell me what? She said, they just sprayed the ceiling with raw chlorine bleach to get rid of the mold. I am a registered nurse, and I went to work one night, November 22nd, 2013, and I discovered they had painted the unit. Now, I didn't actively smell anything, on the unit, but they were painting. They were in progress in painting, so forth. By the time my shift started at 3 o'clock, and about halfway into the shift, my eyes started to get red, my nose started to drip, and my chest started to burn. And to be quite frank with you, I thought maybe I was coming down with a flu, something like that. So I took a break, went to lunch, actually took 2 aspirin. I left the unit, so I was actually outside. And when I came back, it's like the cascade of events just started all over. Eyes reddening, nose dripping, chest burning. And that was a Friday. So that weekend, I spent the whole weekend in bed, which is just not customary for me. So the following Monday, I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with chemical pneumonitis. So that's kind of like where it started. He gave me some medication. I was off from work. Midway, at least once I was finished taking the medication, it just seemed like the symptoms came right back. So I went back to him. He gave me more medication, and a few more days off. And once that was done, I went back to work. And literally within hours of being at work, accident emergency. And it was with difficulty breathing. More medication, another couple of days off, back to work. And the same thing. And it was like within like an hour or two of being back at work, right back at accident emergency. And I'll be honest with you, I think maybe I was the smartest, because I did that from November 22nd straight up until January of 2014, just back and forth, until I stopped and I said, it can't be me. Something has to be wrong with where I keep going, which is to work. And at that point, I reported the situation to our corporate office. They subsequently had environmental health come in, and it was reported to me that in addition to the paint that I experienced that night, they had actually poured acid down on the floor to clean for the Governor General's visit at the time. And so doctors after that would tell me that that burning that I was experiencing was actually as a result of inhaling the fumes. And this was just the residue, because I wasn't there when they actually poured it on. Environmental health had also determined that the unit itself was infested with black mold. And so it's just like one thing, led to another. I just never seemed to have gotten back to what I was before November 22nd, 2013. I saw, and I just fast forward a bit, between that time, and I'd say now, I saw 17 specialists. I went to the Cleveland Clinic, and this is through NIB. I also was seen at the University of Miami. At the Cleveland Clinic, they had shown me the results of a CT scan that I had done right here in Nassau, and they were showing me all of the areas on my lungs where there was just no air. So my lungs basically, was just getting ready to collapse on me, but I just could not breathe. It was the most difficult thing to breathe. They sent me here to a specialist locally. He did his test, and he still couldn't come up with what was the matter, because the course of everyday living just became more and more difficult. And so I started having what I call attacks. And it's basically, at the time, I didn't know what was like the trigger to those things. So I was still trying to live my life as normal. But I found that coming in contact with like smoke, fumes on the road, diesel, gas, all of these things would literally send me into just severe coughing and hacking and wheezing. Ultimately, the specialist here The pulmonologist here sent me to an immunologist and the only allergist in the country. And he is still my doctor up to this day. Um, I saw him. I had an attack in his office. He put his stethoscope to my throat. And at that point, he told me, he said that there was no air passing my vocal cords. And so that's why I was getting the diagnosis of no air entry on both sides of my lungs, because the problem was actually occurring further up, not in my lungs, but actually much further up. So what they describe it as is vocal cord dysfunction. And what that basically means is that when I'm exposed to a fume, and it could be something as mundane as a perfume or sometimes flowers if they're overwhelming, chemical scents, of course, they say that my vocal cords fatten, they start to quiver, they fatten, and then they close. And what I actually feel, it almost feels like when you have to clear your throat, it feels like mucus is building up in there, and then they just close. And so I'm just not able to breathe. It was told to me that one day my vocal cords may not respond to fresh air anymore, and that'll either be the day that I die or the day that I get a tracheostomy. My daughter and I pretty much live here alone, and I was shocked because my son was basically doing the grocery shopping and stuff like that during COVID-19. So I sent him to the bank so we could get money so we could go and do some grocery shopping, and that's when I discovered that there was nothing there. So of course I called my workplace, and they said, well, your salary's been coded. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And they're like, well, you're gonna get a letter. So I'm like, well, can't you just tell me what it means? And they were, you're gonna get a letter. And then, a little more, well, your salary's been stopped. So I was like, in the middle of a pandemic? I thought to myself, I said, are you kidding me? In the middle of a pandemic? I said, but I thought the Prime Minister just said that they're gonna hold off on whatever it is until, things have settled down. And so, to say the least, I was shocked. I felt like no matter what, at some point, they would have to sit down with me and work out what are the next steps forward. I just didn't think that they were going to stop my salary and then, sort of push me into thinking, what is the next step forward? So the end of July will actually make 3 months that I've not had an income. Because like I said, I wasn't made aware of it before I actually went to the bank and found out that there was nothing there. And so my son, they emailed me a letter, and the letter was dated for May 13th that said that my salary was going to be stopped effective May 1. And I got that letter on May 29th. They had sent me a letter in November, and that letter basically said that they wanted to do a medical board review. And they gave me a form to fill out, which I took to my allergist. And when I got it back, it was literally just before we started the lockdowns. And so my son had gone up there to take to not only to retrieve some stuff, but their compound was locked down. So they weren't allowing anybody on and off the compound. Tried to seek advice from a lawyer and so forth. At one point, he said to me, the mere fact that they're still paying you, because like I said, this occurred in 2013, and the pay ended in May of 2020. He said to me, this is probably about as good as it's gonna get, because they're probably not ever gonna admit that, something happened and that as a result of what happened at the workplace. And he said, this is probably the closest to an acknowledgement that you're gonna get. I think you could smell the fumes, but this is what I have to deal with on a daily basis. That over there, they said that they were putting down a farm, and It's a trucking company. So every day, they operate every day, Monday through Sunday. And before COVID-19, they started at 6:15 a.m. every day and ended about 10:30 at night. That's right. The neighbors have complained. We've all complained. We've written letters to the environmental health, all sorts of things, because we wanted to know how could this happen in the middle of a residential area. Um, so we had to make some adjustments to the house just so that I could live. So a friend of mine, we had to seal in the doorways, and just to prevent some of the fumes from getting inside the house. And I'll show you, I can show you. Yeah, so if you notice, this door is the eastern side as well, so we had to seal in all the doors to prevent the fumes from coming inside. So I'll take you down to my bedroom, because the doctors in the United States told me that I have to create a safe room. My son got this for me, and basically what this is a covering. It's basically just like bubble wrap. And so when the fumes are really bad outside, and it was pretty bad this morning, so I can zip it up. I can open it when the air is good, so I can get a little breeze. And then of course I have the fan that has to circulate the air inside the room. So all of my windows are like that. So if you see over there, I have 2 sets of windows. It's like that. So I have it open now so I can get air. But if the air is bad, for example, if they're spraying for mosquitoes, when the dump was on fire, when people are burning their trash in the yard, then I have to literally zip myself up and come into what is now my safe room. My allergist had written them on numerous occasions outlining what type of environment I need to work in. And right up until June of 2014, I was still going back and forth to work. But I would just tell you, the last experience I had, they placed me in an area that was supposed to be perfect. It was ventilated. It was good. And for the first day, I'll be honest with you, I suffered through it, but without complaint, because I just didn't want to be a burden. But by day 2, I just couldn't do it. The nurse that was working with me, she asked me, she said, "What is wrong?" And I told her, I said, "I'm in so much pain." I said, "My chest is burning." She said, "Your eyes are red." And I said, I can't do this. I said, this is hard. This area is, it's driving me nuts. And she said, "Well, didn't they tell you?" I said, "Tell me what?" She said, "They just sprayed the ceiling with raw chlorine bleach to get rid of the mold prior to me coming there." And I was like, I mean, this is my life. It seems laughable now, but back then it wasn't laughable at all. It was very painful. And at that point, I think that was the point my allergist said, they're not trying to help you. It's just, what is it that I do for the rest of my life? And it's not that I haven't sort of tried to retool. I approached PHA. I earned my master's degree in health informatics. Their response to me was that they were going to deal with me when I get back. If you had asked me in 2014 if I was going to be here, I would have said, no, I don't think so. I fully believe that this is something I would have gotten over until the years started to go by and nothing is changing. And there's no real prospect. In fact, I was told this is it. This is going to be it for me. So nothing's going to change. I mean, unless there's a divine intervention, nothing's going to change. And that's a very daunting prospect.